Or are they in person? Yep. So Chelsea and Aaron, I see you both. So I'll just turn it over to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think Aaron is going to go ahead and share their screen so you can see our presentation. While they're getting that going, I can just quickly introduce us. My name is Chelsea Mossy. I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations for the Okanagan region with BC Transit, and I am joined today by Aaron Sparks, our Senior Transit Planner for the region. You can go to the next slide. So today I'm just going to give a really quick overview of the BC Transit model. I won't go into too much depth as I know you've heard it all from me before. I'll then speak to UMO, our electronic fare collection system, which is coming to your transit system later this year, as well as the topic of complimentary transit for Summerland residents. And then I'll turn it over to Aaron, who will finish with our South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Action Plan. So this slide here, I know you've seen it before, but just gives a quick visual depiction of the BC Transit partnership model as a reminder. So on the one side of things, BC Transit works with the provincial government, who ultimately sets public policy objectives for transit, and they also provide approximately half of the funding for transit systems. In the middle there is BC Transit. We deliver a shared services organization. So we have a whole staff of subject matter experts ranging from our planning and scheduling teams to marketing and communications, finance, accounting, and so forth. And BC Transit's responsible for arranging for the delivery of transit service through contracts. And we also work with our local government partners to deliver transit supportive infrastructure. And then we work with our 58 local government partners. Of course, in this case, that's the District of Summerland, who are responsible for setting the priorities for their transit systems, responsible for setting the routes and areas served, and also responsible for setting the local fare structure, which is important to note for the next slide. And BC Transit holds the contract with our contracted operating companies, who in this case in your transit system is Barry and Smith. Next slide. So BC Transit's very excited to introduce electronic fare collection technology in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system near the end of this year. This electronic fare collection system is branded as UMO, and it will introduce a customer-facing mobile app as well as a reloadable smart card. And in the future, people will be able to pay with their credit card and debit cards to tap on to the bus as well. It's important to note that cash will remain as a payment option for transit. The introduction of UMO will require some changes to your existing fare structure. So we will be coming back to council with some recommendations on those fare structure changes this summer. We know that Summerland Council is interested in looking at complimentary transit for Summerland residents, specifically on the Route 30 Summerland-Penticton. So there will be options through UMO to facilitate this. And also we will be able to work with the District of Summerland on some shorter term options for making transit free for Summerland residents on that route in particular. And I know staff will be speaking to that in a presentation later on, or in a report later on, excuse me. And next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, who will discuss the Transit Future Action Plan for the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit System.
Great. Thank you so much, Chelsea, and thank you everyone for having us here today. Oh, that didn't work. There we go. Okay. The South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Action Plan is really just a roadmap for improving the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system. It is an update to the 2015 Transit Future Plan and acts as a guide for fulfilling the vision that's outlined on the screen in front of you, which is to create a transit system where transit is really the preferred choice for residents and visitors, attracting riders through comfortable, safe, accessible, and convenient service. As Chelsea mentioned, the transit system is delivered by BC Transit in coordination with our local partners, which in this case is the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, City of Penticton, Town of Princeton, and of course the District of Summerland. Final decisions on fares, routes, and service levels are made by our local government partners. This slide highlights some of the recent changes to the transit system, starting with January 2021, where we introduced service to Peachland on Route 70, which also provides service to Summerland. And we added 2 midday trips on Route 70, Tuesday through Friday. And then more recently in January 2022, we introduced Route 11 West Bench, as well as added Saturday service and 2 additional weekday trips on Route 30, Summerland, Penticton. This slide just highlights some of the sort of transit need information that we have. So as everyone's probably aware, the South Okanagan is certainly growing. We saw about an 8.5% growth between 2016 and 2021. And based off of where people are living, we know that most people live in Penticton. That's where we see the highest density, where we see the highest population overall, but certainly there are people represented in all sort of population areas across the region. In terms of age, about 15% of people across South Okanagan are 19 or younger, and about 33% are 65 plus. And I highlight this just because these are age ranges that we typically tend to associate with higher rates of transit use. And then roughly 54% of commutes in the South Okanagan are less than 15 minutes, which presents some really strong potential for switching those trips from single occupancy vehicles to perhaps transit use. In terms of system performance, we know that Route 5 Main Street, so that's a local Penticton route, currently has the highest ridership. It had approximately 400 daily boardings in fall 2021, and it's also the most productive route when we look at boardings per revenue hour. We're having about 22 boardings per revenue hour in fall 2021. And boardings per revenue hour is one of the other sort of measures that we look at. And it's really helpful because it helps us compare ridership compared to investment, because it takes into account how many hours are actually being dedicated to a specific route, just so that we're kind of comparing apples to apples instead of comparing a route that has a really high level of service to a route that has a lower level of service, just because it's going to be much more difficult to see the same level of ridership on those routes, just because the level of service is so different. In terms of span, all routes in the system operate Monday through Friday, with the exception of Route 50, which operates Monday, Wednesday, and Friday only, and functions as a hybrid health connections and paratransit route. And weekend service depends, it varies depending on the route. We do offer Sunday level service on certain statutory holidays, but other than that, there is not service on stat holidays. And as mentioned before, we recently introduced Saturday service on Route 30, Summerland, Penticton. There are currently 5 round trips a day, with service offered from roughly 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. from Summerland, and then from roughly 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Saturdays. Some additional system performance information focusing specifically on COVID-19. So as expected, given guidance from the provincial health officer to limit non-essential travel, we saw a pretty significant drop in transit ridership in the South Okanagan, as well as across the province and really across the world in March 2020. Ridership dropped to its lowest point in April 2020, where monthly boardings fell by about 43% compared to 2019 levels. But since then, we have seen ridership continue to recover, and ridership continues to recover, and transit continues to provide essential services to the community, including access to Okanagan College, the hospital, and other key destinations across the region. Moving into the Transit Future Action Plan, focusing first on engagement. So engagement was carried out in 2021 and 2022 and consisted of multiple phases. In phase 1, we held key stakeholder workshops, we had onboard intercept surveys, and we had also planned some additional in-person engagement for this phase, but that ultimately was postponed due to COVID. In phase 2, we had an online survey as well as in-person open houses. So we did get to do some in-person engagement as part of this. And then in phase 3, we had additional targeted online engagement for specific service proposals. We worked with local partners and the operating company Barry & Smith to ensure that paper surveys were available for those who needed them, because we did most of the engagement focused on online. So we wanted to ensure that people still had opportunities to participate and have their voices heard, even if they didn't have access to a computer or didn't want to fill out an online survey. We had conducted marketing to the community through a variety of tools, including a project website. We had newspaper ads, targeted mailouts, internal bus ads, social media posts, as well as posting information on BC Transit's website and local municipal websites. We received over 500 responses across all phases of engagement. We saw most people submitting feedback through phase 2 and phase 3 online surveys. According to feedback from phase 3, most people were most satisfied with the capacity, the condition, and cleanliness of the vehicles, as well as the demeanor of bus drivers, which is always nice to see. And respondents were most dissatisfied with service span and frequency, as well as the ease of trip planning. And on this, I just want to note that this phase of engagement was conducted shortly after the launch of NextRide, which is our real-time vehicle monitoring system. So it really kind of improved the trip planning capabilities of BC Transit. And so some respondents might not yet have been aware of this tool and sort of aware of the impact that this has on improving that trip planning piece. And in terms of sort of who we heard from in terms of transit usage, we had 52% of our respondents across all phases of engagement were not transit users. We had 15% who took transit a few times a month, and then 13% who are regular transit users. And that 52% might kind of stand out, but it's, I think, really important to keep in mind that this means that we're capturing information on latent demand. So we're learning, why don't you take the bus? What would help you get on the bus? So it's still really useful information when we think about improvements that we want to make to the system. This is a slide that just looks at what we heard across the Okanagan-Similkameen system. So people who might live in Penticton or in Princeton or Summerland or wherever, this is all respondents. We saw that respondents primarily ride the bus for shopping, errands, social, recreation, or entertainment purposes. We didn't see as many people riding the bus to get to work or to school. Respondents who don't take transit because there are no stops near their house, the service isn't convenient for them, or they use another mode. So they might drive, or they might take their bike, or they might walk. In terms of what people wanted to see for what things people thought were appealing, we saw span and frequency increases as really being the thing that people were interested in across all areas. And then as well as interest in seeing improved amenities along bus routes. So things like shelters or benches, garbage cans, that kind of thing. Specifically for Summerland, we saw similar reasons for taking the bus. So people primarily riding for shopping, errands, social, recreation, or entertainment purposes. We did see a few more people from Summerland saying that they take the bus for medical or dental purposes. And then consistent with other RDOS respondents for terms of why people don't take transit. So there are no stops near their house, the service isn't convenient, or they use another mode like biking or walking or driving. In terms of priorities that were really popular for Summerland residents, we saw local Summerland service really being the key priority, as well as interest in seeing Friday and Saturday evening service to and from Penticton via Route 30. So moving into the specific priorities that were being proposed through the Transit Future Action Plan, these are the short-term service priorities specifically for Summerland. So the plan has priorities across the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen, but for the purposes of this, I just wanted to focus on Summerland priorities. And when I say short-term priorities, we're talking about priorities that we would be looking to implement in the next 3 years. So the first would be the introduction of Sunday service on Route 30 Summerland-Penticton. So this would be taking the existing service that runs between Summerland and Penticton, adding it on Sundays, providing 3 round trips a day. And then we would also be looking at introducing a new Route 32. So this would be dedicated local transit service in Summerland, operating at the beginning, Monday through Saturday. So this would be 6 days a week, and the exact resources required to this would be determined through a bit of additional engagement. This service would be expected to operate between Lowertown, Trout Creek, and downtown, likely operating in a loop, just serving those 3 parts of Summerland based off of engagement. That was really where people were interested in seeing that local service. In terms of longer term service priorities, we will be looking to really just build on the existing and proposed service. So looking at expanding local service to operate on Friday and Saturday evenings, as well as eventually introducing Sunday service. And then for Route 30, we would be looking at adding Friday and Saturday evening service. In terms of the investment strategy, as with sort of any plan with a scope of this size, consistent provincial and local funding is required to implement these priorities. This plan requires sustained capital and operating investments over the planned timeline because it calls for approximately 14,000 additional annual service hours and at least 4 additional vehicles by 2030 for all of the priorities. Specifically for Summerland, it calls for just over 1,000 hours plus any additional hours to implement that local service. And I'll note here that the resources required to fully implement this plan may increase as we look to add service to areas of new demand, as well as in order to ensure that we are maintaining proper vehicle spare ratios. So there may be additional vehicles required in order to maintain the correct fleet to continue serving the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen. Moving forward, the service improvements will be integrated into our 3-year transit improvement process, which is a rolling 3-year program that is updated annually. As part of our implementation process, we will work with local government staff to identify priorities, which will be costed and presented to boards and councils for approval prior to seeking provincial funding. Through the transit improvement process, local governments are presented with 3-year memorandums of understanding. The first year represents a financial commitment upon signing, while the second and third years are presented for budgeting and planning purposes. Additional targeted engagement may be conducted as required to ensure that the priorities that we are proposing for implementation align with community need at that time. And service improvements will always be informed by an annual route performance review. In terms of next steps for this plan, BC Transit recommends that the District of Summerland endorse this Transit Future Action Plan to be the guiding document in the South Okanagan over the next 5 to 7 years. And then, as I mentioned, following endorsement, the proposals will be integrated into our expansion and service change planning process. That is the end of our presentation. So I will stop sharing my screen and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. We'll have some questions, I'm sure. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very kindly, Your Worship. My question is regarding the Route 30 expanded service between Summerland and Penticton for Fridays and Saturdays. I'm not quite sure. It says 10 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Can you explain that a little better to me? 635 annual service hours.
Through the chair, yeah, so I can definitely clarify. So we would just be looking at expanding the existing service van. So currently on Saturdays, leaving from Summerland, Route 30 leaves Summerland at 4:40 p.m. and arrives at Cherry Lane about an hour, 40 minutes later. So we would just be looking at adding additional trips on Saturday and Sunday to provide additional opportunities for people to travel to and from Summerland or Penticton, maybe go to a movie or go out to dinner or do some shopping.
I understand that. Is the 10 p.m. the last run from Penticton to Summerland?
So that would be the last trip leaving Summerland going to Penticton.
Leaving Summerland and going to Penticton. Thank you very much.
Just on that though, that's a long-term priority. The expanded that evening route. I'm just wondering, in respect to additional vehicles, what can we accomplish with our existing vehicles? Can we do any of the short-term service priorities with our existing fleet, or at what point do we have to add buses?
Through the chair, that's a good question. So currently with the existing fleet, you would be able to introduce the Sunday service. So that would be adding Sunday service on Route 30. That would not require an additional vehicle. After that point, and this would be subject to sort of additional scheduling and planning work, but the expectation is that at that point you would start looking at adding additional vehicles.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of prioritizing in the short-term service priorities, which of these elements would be implemented first? So either the Route 30 introduced on Sunday versus the new Route 32 doing dedicated local service. Does council have input into which one would be ultimately going first?
Through the chair, yes. So you absolutely, the local government has sort of final say on service levels and expansion priorities. Through engagement, we certainly heard that that dedicated local service was what people wanted to see the most. But again, I think if there is a desire from council to focus on continuing to build up the Route 30 service, then we could look at prioritizing that first. But yeah, certainly when we present the memorandums of understanding through our expansion program, you have the opportunity as a council to kind of guide what is implemented and when.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you. And to follow up with that, related, so I definitely see the value in the short-term priorities, but for me, I'm unsure of committing to the long-term service priorities without having a better understanding of the success of the short-term priorities once they're implemented. So for me, I'm a little reluctant to commit to a long-term plan of that growth without seeing kind of more results after this is implemented, if you see where I'm going.
I can perhaps provide some clarification on that, just in terms of this, the Transit Future Action Plan is really sort of the roadmap for improvements of the transit system. So in endorsing this plan, you're really endorsing the vision. And then when it comes to the timeline for implementing specific priorities, we can take a look and say, okay, here's how things are going. Here's how Route 30 is performing. Here's how Route 32 is doing. Do we feel comfortable looking at adding evening service on Route 32 at this time? Or do we feel like perhaps it's more appropriate to hold off for now, maybe focus on additional Route 30 service because that's where we're seeing demand. And then we can kind of delay introducing improvements or expansions on Route 32, for example, until we feel it's appropriate at that time to make those choices. That's sort of the Transit Future Action Plan is kind of the vision, and then through our expansion planning process, we have the opportunity to say, okay, we kind of thought that 2030 was the time to do this. Does it maybe feel like 2032 is the time, or do we feel like we need to do this service, much earlier than expected? So it's kind of, we have these sort of check-ins built into the process, and we do, our annual performance reviews to make sure that things are lining up with expectations, and we have opportunities throughout to kind of revisit priorities.
Maybe I can just add to what Erin just said as well. So I just want to clarify that there's no financial commitment in terms of council endorsing the Transit Future Action Plan. As Erin said, this is just a guiding document for transit for the next 5 to 7 years. When it comes to actual financial commitments, that's done through our transit improvement process, which is the process through which we plan expansions. And as Erin also mentioned, we only ever ask for a financial commitment when it's an expansion plan for the coming fiscal year. And then anything that we are looking at for any subsequent year, we would come back to you in later years. That's just for planning and budgeting purposes.
Thank you so much for answering my questions.
So just on that though, as Councillor Betts was saying, which priorities we would think is more important, expanding Route 30 further or introducing Route 32. Will those financials, the costings of those expanded services come to us at some point, and then we make our decision based on that? See, you're nodding, so I guess that's yes. Councillor Peake.
That was one of my questions. Thank you very much, Your Worship, for putting it forward. My other question was, and it's re-clarification, the short-term service priorities. You said that the Route 30 would be with the existing fleet. Is Route 32 expansion with the existing fleet?
Through the chair, that would really depend a little bit on how we schedule the service. So right now, Route 30 is done on one vehicle. It's one vehicle kind of going back and forth between Penticton and Summerland all day. And so if we were to try and accommodate that within the existing fleet, we would likely have to have a schedule that is fairly constrained, because it would have to operate kind of in the periods of day when the Route 30 is not is not operating, which will be very difficult to accomplish. And so I see Chelsea is unmuted. I don't know if you wanted to jump in.
I just wanted to add that when the Route 30 is currently not operating, that bus is being used for the local on-request service. So I think it would require another bus, but it would be for our fleet team to evaluate through our transit improvement process. When you would see that in the form of your memorandum of understanding when it comes to you with costing, whether or not it requires another vehicle.
And what about Route 32? Would that require another vehicle? I'm having a little trouble understanding this.
That's okay. I think it would likely require another vehicle, but that's determined when we evaluate the expansion priority with our fleet team.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you. Just a quick question, if I may, through your contractor, Barry Smith, do you know how many fully electric buses they're using at this point in time?
Through you, your worship. Currently, there are no battery electric buses being operated in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system. BC Transit's low carbon fleet program looks to have a fully electric fleet by 2040, but we're just in the very early stages of starting the electrification process. So we'll be rolling out our first 10 battery electric buses in the Victoria Regional Transit System this summer. And from there, we'll be looking to start introducing them throughout our regional transit systems in the coming years based on the fleet replacement plan. So basically, as buses age out, we'll be looking to replace them with battery electric buses.
Could Route 30 be the first one in the Okanagan?
We'll see. It's all dependent on the charging infrastructure.
We have lots of chargers here. So. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Aaron, in your average daily boardings, I see that Route 30, do you have an actual number for your annual daily boardings for Route 30 from I guess the 2021, the fall of 2021?
Yes, just give me 1 second. I realize it's presented in PDF form, but I will try to get that number. So in the fall of 2021, we were seeing an average of about 26 daily boardings on Route 30.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. Just for the CIO, what they're asking for endorsement. So what's the process from here?
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. I think our preference would be we would bring a report back to council on the 24th of April for that endorsement or further discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. We're discussing next the free fare. Will you stay on the line for that discussion? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Traynor.
Chelsea and Aaron, I just have a quick question, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but the short-term priorities, what again is your timeline for these?
Through the chair, our short-term service priorities, our implementation timeline would be in the next 3 years. So it would be from 2024 through to 2027.
Okay.
And then, of course, as always, that's contingent on receiving provincial funding. Yeah, that's the target timeline for
3 years. Okay, that's what I thought I heard you say. Thank you for confirming.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on. It's the public comment opportunity. Don't see anybody here. Do we have anybody online? No. So moving on to the business items. The first one is the free fare pilot for Route 30, and I'll turn this over to our sustainability coordinator, Odessa Cohen.
If I can just jump in to introduce that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's on my list too, my fault.
No one needed to know that. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I just want to say a few words of introduction. In Council's recently adopted strategic priorities and associated work plan, there is a specific priority for building an adaptable and affordable community. And a key initiative in that priority is to support affordability through providing free transit for the residents of Summerland. Council asked staff to come forward with options for a pilot program to test the feasibility of free transit. Now, initially, we had thought we might need to wait until the fare collection system that was discussed moments ago is rolled out to see the pilot move forward. However, thanks to the great work of our staff team and BC Transit on this file, back today with some concrete options, one of which is to allow free transit pilot to proceed as early as this spring on Route 30. Free transit for residents eliminates any possible financial barrier for residents that wish to access the service. It also supports the environmental agenda for the community. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Sustainability Coordinator, Odessa Cohen.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So Graham gave a very great introduction there, pretty much stole all my points for this presentation. So yeah, I'll give all the background details. So as mentioned, Council requested staff back on January 9th of this year to come back with a report based off of the request to examine a free fare pilot program in Summerland. The image here just shows the transit map for Route 30 only, so between Penticton downtown at Cherry Lane all the way up to the library here in Summerland. So as part of the review, I discussed in depth with council options to consider for the free fare program. As BC Transit has kind of alluded to, this UMO electronic transit ticket system is going to be implemented this fall approximately. And then in 2024, if we were to have a specific Summerland free fare pass, it would have to be done in early 2024. So this is an option regardless. It would just mean that we would wait until 2024 to roll it out to the public. In the meantime, transit would operate as usual, payments and fares would be taken, and then BC Transit would go forth with doing their engagement with each of the municipalities within the South Okanagan region that are part of the larger regional transit system. With regards to finance, it would be approximately $20,000 lost in revenue based off of just the fact that we would be removing a specific body of people from paying. And then the administration would just require staff to take proof of residency in order to purchase that fare pass, which would then be installed on the wallet of the electronic ticket system. And then BC Transit would provide training for staff and cashiers, regardless of which pass we go with, just because the UMO would have to be completely re-implemented into all the participating communities. There we go. The second option is a flash pass. So similar to what we see with students, where they'll have a sticker or a specific photo ID. So this is an option. This one's a bit quicker. So this one could be implemented sooner. It would be, in talking with BC Transit after the report was submitted, they did say it would take more than 2 months to get it done just based off of their capacity with staff. However, there is the other alternative to go and use a BC ID that shows your Summerland residency as like an address. So that one would be implemented much sooner. You wouldn't require a sticker or a flash pass type of fare, but it would just mean that it could be done a bit quicker than what we would be needing to wait on to develop that sticker. It would be, again, temporary. These are all pilots aside from the UMO. They would go up until December 31st. And then once the rollout for the electronic transit fare system is done in 2024. If council would like to maintain it as a permanent feature for Summerland residents, it would then become a wallet feature, and Summerland residents could then add that on when they provide proof of residency. The financial constraints with this, again, there's a loss of revenue for $20,000 approximately, as well as the cost to actually develop a flash pass if we decide to go with that. Again, at the time the report was made, BC Transit was not able to provide me an estimate as to how much that would cost. And unfortunately, I haven't had that updated yet, but that could be provided at a later date. The administration, if we do a flash pass, it would be the development and the design of it, going through a communication plan for all of these to share that we are doing a free transit program. We would also have to do a procedure document to help front staff with just the procedure for how to take residency and make sure that they're kind of safeguarded against any disputes and things like that. And then, of course, some manual tracking of the flash passes if we go with a physical one, just to kind of keep track of things because it's not tracked otherwise, just to help us for decision making in the future. And again, if it was done with just a bare bones BCID, health card, or driver's license, or even like a student card, that would require no cost to us, and it would be done a lot sooner, probably within the month or so, just to make sure bus drivers are made aware of the change. And lastly, free monthly bus passes. So this was kind of brought around staff, and I think it was also brought around through council. But here, the idea of just giving out our existing monthly passes. These are the BC Transit monthly passes. However, this is a larger revenue loss. It's not only revenue from Summerland, but revenue across all of the participating municipalities, because the monthly bus passes are applied to all of the South Okanagan transit systems. So the 70, the 30, the internal with Penticton, and then the ones going to Princeton and Penticton as well. So there is a larger cost to that for revenue loss. There's a lot more administration and making an agreement between all those municipalities, figuring out how to divvy up those revenue losses, how much we would pay, et cetera. And of course, communication, and making sure we have a procedure plan for staff as well. So with that being said, staff is recommending option 2 for a trial period using a flash pass or BCID license with the Summerland address on there. And it would be for just Route 30 for Summerland residents only. Yeah, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, Council? Councillor Van Alphen.
So are we looking at the other way too? Penticton has free service to Summerland? Or is this just Summerland residents get free passage to Penticton only? Correct?
Through the chair, so if it's a Summerland, it's just a Summerland specific free pass, but because it's on Route 30, the idea was that they would get back and forth. So they would get the access there and access back.
But if I'm a Penticton resident, can I get a free pass to come and shop here?
Through the chair, no, that would not be possible. It's only for Summerland residents. So if a Summerland resident has a flash pass, it's only them who are able to obtain it with proof of residency.
Okay, thank you.
Wrong button. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm just trying to put the figures in my head, Odessa. So currently we have 12,000 citizens in Summerland, but 26 ride the bus. There is a cost of 20,000 plus possible administration fees, which could, just put it for easy numbers, $6,000. So say 26 grand for 26 people. So what's happening is our citizens are paying $1,000, or we're losing $1,000 of revenue for 26 people to ride the bus free. I'm really, really struggling with this because the food bank hands out free passes for the bus. There's social programs out there that supply people free bus passes. I'm not sure why we want to go down this route and spend this kind of money for 26 people based on the BC Transit numbers for daily riders. So unfortunately, I can't support this, but I think it would be there's others coming up in the program that I could agree with, but not with this one. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to CO Stat first and then a few other councillors.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Holmesen. and through the mayor to Councillor Patton. So the roughly $20,000 estimate is the total revenue that we would normally receive, right? So there is an ebb and flow, obviously, to ridership. And we know that because 26 people wouldn't produce $20,000 in revenue. So that's already, I think, built into the budget based on council's previous directions and based on the strategic priorities. We're sort of booked it into that revenue adjustment. Certainly put that revenue back in. But what I would say is that the vision is, since the overall revenue loss at that $20,000 would facilitate open and all access to all of Summerland residents, it really tests whether perhaps the financial expense is a barrier to people of Summerland, which I think it falls into council's priority for building an adaptable and affordable community. So just that clarity on the revenue is the total revenue for the year that we would otherwise anticipate for all ridership on those services.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with you, Graham, but there is a cost also. We still have to pay BC Transit for the service. And the $20,000 that we may be missing out on fees, yes, but what's not being directed and how much we do know is what is our direct impact costs for operating that transit bus? Because the ridership pays the fees that we pay to BC Transit. And so I get where you're coming from, but there is still a cost involved that we pay BC Transit that we do, that could be more than 20,000, might be less than 20,000, and it's all going to be dependent on that ridership, as you said. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Barkwell.
I'm not really, I could put it this way, I'm not really following Councillor Patton's math on this. It's both better and worse, because we only contribute a little bit towards the operation of the bus and the provincial transit. We're only covering a portion of the cost. I was just looking at our budget amount for revenue for the whole year is $19,000 in the budget. Although I think that's a low estimate, because I think last year it says it was 23,000, but we're doing it for a portion of the year. So it won't be like we're going to lose the entire year's revenue. And the real purpose is to see if we do get some increased ridership and add a little bit more value to the total cost of running those buses, because I don't know what we pay of the total costs here, 20% or something. You're right, the cost per rider on the bus system is pretty high. It's not $1,000 per person because it's not the same 26 people every time. But if we can increase ridership by this sort of a small reduction, it's worth finding out. At least try it for a year. Is what I would like to see us do.
We'll come back to you. There's quite a few people who want to speak. Councillor Van Elfen.
I understand the concept behind it and stuff. The problem I'm wrapping my head around is I got to put on my business cap. If I'm a grocery store owner in town and now all of a sudden we're going to send people for free to Penticton to shop or what have you, it'll affect my bottom line. The other problem I have, if it was a two-way street, I'm 100%. If Penticton people could ride to Summerland at no cost, that'd be awesome. I'd be thrilled to death and I could support it. But a one-way, go to Penticton, spend your money, enjoy yourself, come back. No cost. Well, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that one. Especially if you're a business owner in the community, coffee shop owner, a grocery store owner, whatever it may be, hardware store owner. Now all of a sudden you get a free trip to Penticton to buy something there and come back. Yeah, that's where I'm having troubles with it.
Councillor Traynor.
For me, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Patton. But for me, I see this as a trial project and I see the bigger picture. If we're going to have transit, our whole goal is to get more people riding the bus. We want to get people used to it, becoming more comfortable doing it, it becoming more like a natural thing instead of, oh, I'm going to take the bus today. Like, I just see it as a trial to get people aware of the bus, that it's there. And then I'd like to see the numbers go up. And then I think ultimately it will start, we'll start to get a bit more money back from it. And I don't necessarily think that people are going to ride to town just to buy something. I mean, I understand where Councillor Van Elfen's coming from, but I think that they might be going for doctor's appointments and other things, to visit friends. And again, the goal is to get more people riding the bus and to become more comfortable with it. So I think that it's not just about money, it's about the environment, and it's about getting cars off the road. And so that's kind of how I see this trial. I'm trying to look at a whole bunch of different factors besides just the $20,000.
Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor Barkwell, this is in the reports, has talked about $20,000 loss. So I have to go by the amounts that are in the report. Also in the staff recommendation, it only talks about running this until December 31st. So we're talking $20,000 loss well, they're not talking maximum loss, they're talking loss of $20,000, which could happen in 6 months. And I understand where you're coming from, that the budget is $19,000, but then the numbers that have been given to us are $20,000. And the bigger question, the dilemma I have is, what is the benefit for the majority of Summerlanders? Is this a benefit for the majority of Summerlanders, or is this a benefit for a selected few? And I think that's where I'm having a problem with, because we seem to make a lot of decision that it is for the selected few and not for the greater of Summerland. And so that's my, that's all I have to say on that. Thanks.
Okay, I wouldn't mind getting a crack in here at some point too, but we'll go Councillor Peak, Councillor Barkwell, and Councillor Betts.
I'm really struggling with this, but because I do believe that there could be a detrimental impact on things like our outlets here, our IGA, our Nesters, or whatever they are now, our own hardware stores, our own coffee places. I really do see the opportunity that it could be an exit of dollars that would normally be invested in Summerland. And I struggle with that because I understand the concept of carbon impact and trying to get more people onto buses. So I really am struggling with the concept of making it free. And it's a trial period, but still doing that looks like we'll do it on into the future. So I really am struggling with the concept.
Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, I have a hard time imagining there'd be any significant number of people taking advantage of free buses that didn't go to Penticton to buy whatever it was they wanted already. It's pretty difficult to carry too much groceries. I think our bus users are generally either youth or elderly, people who can't drive. But we want to see more people on buses, maybe more commuters that work in Penticton and could go back and forth. The cost is just one barrier to giving people people having the bus, giving it a try, as Councillor Trainer said. The other part about, well, are we benefiting a particular segment of this community? I think that could be said for almost anything we do. I don't go to the pool, yet the pool is being subsidized a great deal by our general tax revenue. I don't play hockey, but the arena is being subsidized, and all the kids that play on the pool, the ice time doesn't pay for the total operating cost of the arena, nor does the baseball players pay for the total cost of operating the field. So, that applies everywhere all the time. So this is just an additional service that we would be providing, and as a test to see if it, if it doesn't really increase ridership any significant amount, then maybe it would be pointless, and we'll have to revisit it next year. But we've got to find out.
Councillor Betts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to Councillor Peak, I'm kind of struggling with a couple issues here, especially I definitely appreciate encouraging having people take ownership over climate change initiatives, this kind of thing, versus the more business related comments. At the end of the day, I think that, transportation does have cost, and that people ultimately need to be accountable for those costs. I think for me, I would prefer to see some money invested in better communication to actually advertise our bus services. As a resident, I barely knew that we had a bus, to know that it's an option to take it. So maybe we could encourage ridership in that way as compared to completely subsidizing the program. That's where I land on that.
Go ahead, Councillor Trainer.
I guess I just have one final thought on this. In the Okanagan, people are really used to driving everywhere. When you're in the Lower Mainland, taking the bus is much more an accepted way of transit there. I mean, given they have a way better transit system than we do here, we're still trying to build up our transit system ultimately in the Okanagan. And I think if we want to get people thinking that way over the next 5-10 years, we got to really start making it more accessible and it becoming just part of people's daily thought. Like, oh, I could drive, or I could take the bus, or I could ride my bike. Like, it needs to become more on the top of people's minds. And so for me, I see this as our council really doing a push. Like, we're saying, hey, we're taking this really seriously. We have this system. We really want to get it out there, see what people think of it, get more people riding it, get the numbers up from 26. And I think that offering a free, this free trial is really a way to show our commitment to that and say, this is what we want to do. It does cost a little bit of money, but I think what we'll get out of it is a lot more. People getting used to it, talking about it, and it, like I said, being more top of mind. So I'm all for giving this a trial.
I'm just going to weigh in here. So I think if talking about looking at it from a business perspective, if you're running a business and you don't have very many customers, and you want to increase the number of customers you have, what are you going to do? You're going to market. Spending $20,000 on a marketing campaign isn't very much. And yeah, you could spend $20,000 on advertising, and I'm sure BC Transit spends a lot more than that. And nobody pays any attention to these ads. Free fare, they'll pay attention. I bet we're the first in BC to even contemplate something like this. And that's going to get a lot of attention. And it's going to send a really strong message that we think public transit is something important. And if we want to get people out of their cars and into transit, maybe this is the way to do it. Let's try it. And I need to, I think we should stress it's a pilot. Let's try it. We don't know until we try it. And I guess one question I have is, why is it only till December 31st? Shouldn't it be for a full year? It shouldn't go until the day we, maybe if we bring it on Earth Day this year, it can end on Earth Day next year. Is that possible? I mean, I don't know where that 31st comes from, December 3rd. I think, yeah, we could make it free for everybody, so people from Penticton coming here as well, but there are some people from Penticton we might not want coming here, and we've discussed this, we have discussed this in council in the past. That's why it's part of our strategic priorities. So I wasn't really prepared to have that whole discussion again about, whether this was a good thing, because I thought we'd already kind of agreed that we wanted it. I really think we need to ride the bus ourselves. I make a point of riding the bus 2 or 3 times a year into Penticton, not because I need to, because I own too many cars, but I want to be able to see who rides the bus, who is on that bus. And yes, it's students, it's elderly people, it's also special needs people. And so I think you say, you know, what is the community benefit? The community benefit is that it allows those people to live in Summerland, because otherwise they wouldn't live here. They would live in Penticton. And the reality is more and more services are being centralized regionally in Penticton. And there's going to be more and more need for us to go into Penticton for, you know, which is something we're fighting and will continue to fight, because we'd rather them be able to access services here. But the reality is that's the way it's trending, is that people have to go into Penticton for services. So I think the whole community is better off that people can live in Summerland, but still have a way of getting into Penticton for essential services, whether that's medical appointments, shopping, the Okanagan College, whatever. I mean, the stop is right at Okanagan College. Students can live in Summerland. It sends the message, students can live here. So I think it's not going to kill us to try it for a year. I don't understand why we wouldn't even want to, because you don't know until you try it. Councillor, I'll go to CEO Sat first, and then Councillor Peak.
Well, thank you, Mayor Holmes. And I would just also add, I'd encourage council not to think of this particular option as whether we subsidize or not, because even if we don't go ahead with the free transit program, transit is deeply subsidized, and it always is. It's a public good. People lose money on transit all over the world because it's understood to make it a break-even model would also mean making it unaffordable. In this case, you know, in a Summerland transit sort of context, the transit operations overall, I think, are about $450,000. About half of that's paid for by the province. And so even if we run this pilot for the loss of revenue of $20,000, we still have a contribution of about $225,000 to make transit happen in Summerland. So just to give you a little bit of a delta there in terms of what we're working with, it's a deeply subsidized enterprise if we want to have transit present for our community.
Councillor Peak.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship. I really do appreciate rediscussing this. I wasn't on council before. I think there is value in doing a pilot. I will support it, and I would support it for a year, because I think it gives you a better chance to know on balance who is more likely to be using it, and to encourage an increase in the number of riderships. And I agree with Councillor Betts in terms of advertising it more, because there are a lot of people that are not aware that you can travel around and get to Penticton in hours that work for you, or to get to Kelowna at a reasonable rate. So I think that we need to do a better job of marketing that those options are there. So I will support a pilot, but I would support it better for a year.
Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering about the 1 year versus till December 31st as well. And since there's seems to be support for a longer term, to get a better idea, I will put forward the motion, and I'm just going to change the motion to make it from Earth Day to Earth Day. That seems like reasonable. So I move that staff be directed to move forward with option number 2 for a trial period until Earth Day 2024, as outlined in the report titled Free Fare Pilot for Route 30, Summerland to Penticton, from the Sustainability Coordinator dated April 3rd, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Peak. Okay, Any discussion? Councillor Barco?
Yeah, I left my light on. I just wanted to add, I agree with you 100%. I think that we're going to be seen as taking a real leadership here position in Summerland. Maybe province-wide, to be going with free, and that will be free publicity, which will go towards increasing ridership. There's your marketing program right there by being first.
Odessa, you have something?
Thank you. So as part of that option 2, I presented 2 sub options. One of them is that flash pass, so the physical either sticker or photo ID. And then the other one was just to use the BC ID, either your health card or your driver's license or a school ID card, as long as it shows something of your Summerland resident address. That would be something I would request as part of that motion and make a friendly amendment to clarify what you guys would like to see as part of that option.
Okay. Can we deal with that as a separate motion, maybe? Yeah. Okay, we'll deal with that as a separate motion. So discussion on the first motion that's on the board right now. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't support it for this simple reason. Did our sustainability coordinator have a conversation with Penticton's sustainability coordinator to see if we could make this a two-way street, like a partnership? Or is this just us giving up $20,000 ridership one way?
Through the chair, so no discussions were had with the Penticton coordinator. The direction was to look at it for just Summerland residents only, and so I pursued it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
I should point out, I think it's stressing that Route 30 is a Summerland route. It is not City Penticton, the RDUS, nobody else contributes any money to this route. It's only us that pays for this route. Unlike Route 70, for example, which is a regional route that's paid for by everybody in the region. So even though Penticton benefits from this route by, their people can come here, our people go there to spend their money. The city of Penticton doesn't pay anything, doesn't contribute anything to running Route 30. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think for me, the reality is that transportation has cost. This is a program that's not without cost. Anybody who wants to travel, there's cost. And if we want to grow our transit system, it's not by taking money out of the system. And while I understand and honor the pilot program in the direction that it's going, I won't support it. Sorry.
Okay. Any other? I'll call the question. All in favor with the motion that's on the table? All supported? All opposed? That passes 4-3. Now, so Odessa, just clarification of what you require in terms of what the passes would look like. I'm a bit confused myself on what the options are.
Through the chair, no worries. So the first option, which is in the report, in the report and in the presentation, is a physical flash pass. So it would be a sticker or a photo ID that would be like a BC Transit designed one, and that would cost something for Summerland. As I mentioned in my presentation, BC Transit wasn't able to get back to me on that approximate cost at the time the report was submitted, and today as well, so I don't have that. The second option is to just go forward with a more immediate free pass, which is just using your BC ID to present it to the bus drivers, as long as it has your Summerland residency on it, or the school passes if you're 13 to 18 years old, because they don't get free transit at the moment.
Can't we just design our own? I mean, we design our own ads and newsletters and whatever, and just print cards and people come in that way. Wouldn't that be the easiest thing?
Through the chair, I've been advised that BC Transit would like it to be designed with them. They are on the call unless they advise otherwise. I've been told that they would coordinate with us to make sure that it aligns with their requirements as a pass in addition to ours as well.
Okay. Councillor Peak?
I don't want any more cards in my pocket. I'd rather do it based on residency and either use my health card or my driver's license if I'm traveling, and it does get it up and running faster. It decreases the cost of actually implementing it.
So you support the sticker option?
No, I support residency. So I would show my driver's license or my health car services card. And that shows my residency. So if I'm a Summerland resident, then I get to travel on the bus. That's correct, is it not, Odessa?
Through the chair, that's correct. They said that was a fine option. They'll just make all the bus drivers aware on that route that Summerland residents don't need to pay, and they just need to get that quick flash of your resident card, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's simpler.
Any other? So if you would like to bring that motion forward, Councillor Pink.
Kendra, just put it together. That's a really simple one. Option of.
Councillor Trainer.
Can we do it as direction?
Yeah, just direction. Okay, so just direction.
So Odessa, again, that's pretty easy in marketing then to explain to people. All you need is a BC Services card or your driver's license or health card that has your address on it. And that's all that you need. You just show that to the bus driver and that will get you get you on the bus.
Through the chair, that's correct. That's what they've advised me is sufficient.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward and easy for the public to understand.
Councillor Barkwell?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, we got to do it easy. I wouldn't even ask for picture ID. The revenue loss potential for people, non-residents taking the bus from Summerland to Penticton is negligible, immaterial. So whatever is easiest.
Okay, Councillor Peak?
I want to thank council for a good discussion. I think that vote was well representative of probably how our public will feel about this option of giving it a trial for a year, but it'll be interesting to see where we end up.
Thank you. Okay, so that's directions taken. We can move on to the next item, still on transit. It's holiday special events, free bus fare. Odessa, taking a chance here. The CIO doesn't have to introduce this one. Okay.
Thank you. So this report here is to address a coordinated effort across the participating municipalities within the South Okanagan, being RDOS, Princeton, and the city of Penticton and Summerland, to provide free transit during specific times of the year. One of them being Earth Day on April 22nd of this year, Youth Week, which is May 1st to 7th. So that's anyone 13 to 18 years old, as anyone 12 and under already goes for free. And then we have Seniors Week, which is for those who are 55 plus, between June 1st and 7th. And that would be, as mentioned, in coordination with the other participating municipalities. Based off of council's request for the free transit, that we just had at the previous discussion there, I would say, if anything, Earth Day, April 22nd this year would probably be advisable. I would have to discuss and go back with BC Transit just to see for advertising and making sure bus drivers are aware of the free transit that Summerland has just passed, because it may not be necessary for May and June. It would just be free for everyone. So at this point, it wouldn't be an issue to advertise this, but and to potentially approve it based off of my recommendation here. It would just be a bit of an overlap with what we're already providing. And it's also a provision to make sure that we cover our bases in case it does take a little bit longer to roll out the free fare program if we need to do communications, et cetera. So the staff recommendation is to still approve the free fare for April 22nd, Youth Week, May 1st to 7th, and Seniors Week, June 1st to 7th of this year. Thank you.
Okay, so this would be free for everybody in the region, basically, right? Anybody could just hop on the bus during these times.
Through the chair, so for April 22nd, yes, but for Youth Week, not considering the free fare that council just passed, the Youth Week would be for specific age groups, same with the Seniors Week.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, depending on the timing for rollout of the free fare for Summerland residents only, it may bleed into May a little bit, depending on how long it takes.
Any questions? Don't see any. Somebody'd like to bring a motion forward? Councillor Trainer?
Sure.
Yep.
As presented.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Barkwell, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Patton, Peak, and Van Elfen are opposed. It carries 4-3. 7.3. 2023 late grant and aid requests, and this is over to our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of the budget 2023 process, Council reviewed 16 grant and aid applications and approved a 2023 grant and aid budget of $73,919. During that review process, Council committed $72,919 in grant and aid funding, leaving $1,000 unallocated for late applications, which historically are submitted by sports teams once it's been determined whether or not they make provincials or not. We have received 3 such applications, with each applicant requesting the full $500 allotment, as noted in the grant and aid policy. All 3 applicants were here today. 2 are left. Fire Chief Robinson had to step out on a fire call, but I will speak to his application at that time. So before turning things over to our first applicant, I briefly wanted to summarize the financial implications as laid out in the council report. So should council wish to support all 3 applicants, 2 options have been identified. The first option is to allocate the remaining $1,000 grant and aid budget equally, which would provide each applicant with $333, or whichever fashion council chooses from that perspective. And should council wish to provide each applicant with the maximum $500 grant and aid, we would require a budget amendment as well as additional funding. So with that, I would like to turn things over to our first presenter, Sarah Wilson with Minor Hockey.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Sarah Nilsson. I am here with the Summerland Jets U15 rep team. We are the highest level of hockey in Summerland this year, and hopefully we can keep things going next year. But this year our boys did make it to provincials in 100 Mile House. We were there, we won gold, and part of our application was to allow a little bit of assistance in providing food and activities for the kids while we were there. 100 Mile is a pretty small town, not a lot of restaurants, everything closes at 8, and when the boys are on the ice at 7:45, makes it a little bit tricky. So a group of moms cooked all week for the boys, fed them, kept them entertained, and we were just kind of looking for a little bit of financial aid to ease the cost of the team and the families. So that's pretty much all I've got. So just looking for consideration for our team.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations to the team. That's awesome. Yeah.
And they had all of the other teams on their side supporting them. It was pretty great to see everybody that they beat to get to the gold medal game on the Summerland behind their bench. So it was pretty great.
That's great.
They did really well.
Any questions, Councillor Van Elfen?
Not really a question, but just, well, actually it is, I guess. But first of all, congratulations. I just think that's awesome. And it's always neat to watch that level of hockey and the kids all supporting each other. Even when they lose, they're still supporting the team that beat them, so to speak. But do you think there's, and I guess this is up to our CAO, I suppose, but do you think there'd be an opportunity to have the banner in our lobby for a few days? Just to.
I can run it by. It's right now we just have it within our team. So normally we do a banner ceremony and they hang it and whatever, but we can definitely, I can talk to minor hockey and.
I just think it'd be a real, nice in our lobby for a few days just to show people that, we do support minor hockey and minor youth sports in our community. And I just think it's a real feather in your cap.
That'd be a great. I'll bring that to the association. Thank you.
And maybe you could invite us all to the banner raising as well.
That would be awesome. There is the banquet on April 16th. We don't have any details of that yet, but maybe that's when they'll raise it up. So we'll find out.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Don't see any other questions. Yeah.
So our second presenter today is Jason Corday from the Summerland Secondary Senior Boys Basketball Team.
It's much fancier than our School District 67 board setup. I am the assistant superintendent there, and I'm lucky enough to be the assistant coach and coordinator for the Summerland Secondary Senior Boys Basketball Team. Absolutely tremendous group of boys. We had 13 players with us, 5 seniors this year. We also had 3 grade 10s with us, which is very, very rare in senior boys basketball. And for the first time since, my understanding is the late 80s, early 90s, we captured the Okanagan Valley Championship in our home gym. We hosted the Okanagan Valley Championship and beat last year's provincial champion Westside. It was a great atmosphere in the gym. We probably had 500 people there throughout the tournament for each game. Students really highly engaged in supporting us, and that qualified our team for the provincial championships at the Langley Events Center. And our goal from the beginning of the year was to win that first game, because when you win the first game at provincials, anything can happen. So we did in fact do that. We're highly competitive in the rest of our games, and we finished in 8th place, which is one of the highest seedings in the 55-year history of the senior boys tournament. So much like the first presentation, our boys certainly enjoy eating a lot as well. We stayed down there at an Airbnb, which was more cost effective for us. And we actually had the boys in teams shop, and each team of 4 or 5 boys had to make a dinner. So, our costs are relatively substantial, although we do a fair bit of fundraising. But the cost of all of our meals, et cetera, hasn't been passed along to the boys yet. It comes to around $400 or $500. So really appreciate any consideration for the application. And happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Have you done this presentation with School District 67, the Board of Trustees?
We have not, no. The presentation is particular to the grant application. Okay. But we certainly have a trustee who certainly keeps the rest of the trustees highly informed around our happenings. He's a former coach and a big fan.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cray. Congratulations. Yeah. And Chief Robinson.
I think I need to gray my hair a little bit, but so Chief Robinson was fortunate enough to attend the Canadian Firefighting Curling Championships in Prince Edward Island this year, the 61st championship, and their team won gold medal. So that's pretty much all I can say about the event. He's not going to get the gold medal back. I'm going to keep this, but yeah, but he's also put in an application for $500. Traveling to PEI, I could imagine is somewhat expensive. So that's kind of a summary of the 3 applications, and we look for some council direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. Any discussion, questions? Councillor Betts.
Well, first, just congratulations to all the different applicants on their success in the different competitions. Great job, you guys. And for me, I'm comfortable splitting up the remaining $1,000 equally amongst the three different applicants. That's just where I stand.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I know when we talked, when we were doing grant and aids, this was a banner year in the amount of monies that we did distribute. And I agree with Councillor Betts. I think that I don't see any issues in splitting up that the remaining balance that we have to the three. Thank you.
Councillor Trainer and Councillor Barkwell.
Dave, do you know if we've actually given out the full 72? Like, is it all going to be allocated? Is going to be used?
So through the mayor, right now we have $1,500 that we have not yet mailed to people. $500 of that was for the Legion. It was earmarked for the Legion, and we're waiting to hear back whether or not they received that federal grant yet or not. If they were to receive that federal grant, then the district would hold on to that. So in theory, there's $1,000 that hasn't been allocated to any group yet.
Councillor Barkwell.
Having been around for a while, I would have to mention that in the past, we've supported the firefighters over the years now and then when they've been successful. But we've also, when it's being presented to us for the high school activities, we've always said that the high school was a different entity, that they should be looking after themselves as a high school. And we were more focused on the community at large and hadn't given grants to the high schools, just the the local groups. So if we want to be consistent with with the past, and then we would go for 2 out of 3. Just putting that out there.
I know that has been the practice in the past, and I remember us having that discussion. And I know when I was coaching the SSS tennis team, we went to the provincials one year, and it was, and I know other teams have gone to provincials, and they haven't really been eligible for grant and aids. But I just wonder, is that a practice, or is there anything in our policy about that?
So through the mayor, my understanding is it's just been practice, council practice. The policy doesn't speak to that kind of distinction. So the policy does provide for each of the 3 applicants to receive funding the way it's currently written.
I guess the difficulty is it's one public body giving money to another, basically another public body. But Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, my other concern isn't with grants to the school organizations. Are we opening some floodgates there? The youth are involved through the school to all sorts of sporting activities and going to all sorts of championships and such. So it's not really our purview. And I think my vote is going to stick with the way the council has voted in the past when it's put forward.
Okay, well, we don't have a motion on the table yet, so would somebody like to bring a motion forward? Councillor Trainer.
I'll bring the motion forward that's been suggested by staff.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Patton. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Barkwell, that carries. Okay, moving along to 2023 BC Growing Communities Fund. And I believe our CAO is going to introduce this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will do so. As council's aware, Summerland has been allocated $4.53 million from the province under the Growing Communities Fund. Now that we have received further clarity from the province relating to the use of the funds, we want to come forward to receive any initial direction from council. I'd note the principal objective of the funding stated by the province is to increase local housing supply with investments in community infrastructure and amenities. As a result, while the program has provided significant flexibility on how this might be accomplished, the funds are primarily geared towards capital projects, and these funds should not be used in ongoing operational expenses. As a starting point, council should turn their mind to the existing financial plan, its associated capital plan, and the strategic priorities. Finally, it's noteworthy that the province has outlined some specific expectations for the management of the funds in a separate reserve, and it's also their desire the funds be expended within the next 5 years. Turn it over to our Director of Finance.
Thanks, Graham. I guess like Odessa, Graham just summarized my report for me, so I guess don't need to say anything further, but now that we know what the rules are in terms of spending the grant, we are looking for some council direction on which projects should be allocated funding. And as Graham mentioned, 2 newly adopted strategic documents have been attached to the report in order to provide some overall guidance. So the first document is Council Strategic Priorities Plan, and the second is the Financial Plan. Overall, in the next 5 years, the approved capital plan includes $133.5 million in spending. So using Council's strategic plan should help narrow which projects should be funded. An additional item Council may wish to consider is to look at projects that were originally budgeted to be funded through grants, which have since been denied funding. The report does note 3 such projects that had a budgeted grant funding of $9.1 million. Another area of consideration is debt financing. The Growing Communities Grant could be used on projects currently budgeted to be debt financed, thereby alleviating any rate and or tax increases that could be required due to taking on that debt. To put the 5-year capital plan into perspective, of the approved $133.5 million in capital projects over the next 5 years, 55% or $73.5 million has been budgeted to be funded through debt. Now, a large component of that is $50 million for the recreation center, but that still leaves $23.5 million worth of projects. A final item council may wish to consider is kind of the overall timing of making a decision. Council just recently approved the 2023 to 2027 financial plan after months of discussions and deliberations. Now, should council decide to defer any decisions on allocating this grant to the 2024 budget cycle, it does provide a few benefits. Firstly, this approach would ensure that all capital projects would be measured against each other and would ensure decisions were being made against all projects of community importance, as opposed to making ad hoc immediate decisions based on financial or public pressures. Secondly, should council move forward with this approach, we would invest the funds in a 1-year GIC, which would generate an additional $263,000 in interest, which would increase the amount we could spend in 2024 to $4.795 million. So that concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor, and we are looking for some council direction as to how to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Peak.
I like the idea of investing it for a year and receiving that amount of funds to put towards whatever, debt financing or future projects or whatever. My question in regard to that is, Dave, may I ask, what do we presently do with the surplus funds we have? Do we invest them or any portion of them as we move through any given year? And if so, what kind of funds are invested at present?
So through the mayor, yeah, currently we do invest a portion of our unallocated surplus. We also invest a portion of our reserve funds because we know that we have timelines in when we're going to be using those funds. Our draft statements, financial statements are ready and they're downstairs. I don't have them on me right now, but there's a significant amount of money that we have invested. I can't tell you the exact number. I don't have the statements.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's there, but I can't find it, but the whole eco-village concept. And I believe the last number we had was like $2.5 million to run sewer into that area. And my thought process, if you bear with me, is I think if we invest $2.5 million in sewer, we'll put $5 million in the bank. The eco-village property would be saleable. You're going to have all the other developer on the other side of Deer Ridge who wants to pay in to the sewer system. So we would recoup our money for the sewer system by the sale of the eco-village land, plus a developer buying in, plus other properties that are tied right now for development because of other situations, such as a communal septic system. So all these lands up there could start to be developed and have to buy in or pay into the sewer system. So I think we could have a substantial amount of money. If we invest 2.5 million, we'd have more coming back into our bank account.
Thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree 100% with my colleague over there, Councillor Van Elven. I think that's a top priority, and we will see eventually, not maybe eventually implies too long a term, but we would see before long twice as much money available. I don't quite understand the idea of sitting on the funds. I don't think we have any projects ready to spend them on anyway. You know, we couldn't, you know, it always takes time to do the engineering, the contractors, and line them up, and could be a year before a bill's out there anyhow. But I don't know about further down the list, but I certainly promote the idea of the eco-village and the sewer system and beyond as a first priority.
Just on perhaps for the CAO, since Joe's not here, but so we talked this morning when we were talking about the roads and water plan about the potential of combining the Prairie Valley Road Sanders Cartwright Tomorrow project with the getting sewer to Deer Ridge. So when we have a better idea of that, and we should probably, you know, if we're going to put this money into that, we should understand what exactly it is we're doing first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have Brad here who might know more, but I think we're working up some of those design options right now. So we'd probably have those ready for council consideration with even the next 6 to 8 weeks, I'm guessing, Brad. Yeah, so something in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 weeks. And as I mentioned this morning, part of that, we are trying to have some quiet conversations with those along the way who might be able to contribute to those costs. So we get a better costing idea for council too, depending on those who are paying in. But yeah, I would say about 6 weeks anyway.
So in a way, be putting the cart before the horse. If we decide now we're going to spend money on something that we might change in 6 to 8 weeks, no?
Possibly, because now it's been a while since I see the updated costing here is saying 2.975 on Deer Ridge and Taylor Place, but I think going around the Prairie Way was going to cost up to 750 to $1 million more, but then there's people that might pay into it. And so I think that it could be putting the cart before the horse in the sense that we just don't know the actual pricing comparison to make sure we're apples to apples before council makes a decision on that.
Cart of apples of the horse is pulling. Councillor Van Elfen, I think, was next, then Peak, then Trainer.
Well, question through our planner. Did we had a shelf-ready sewer design for Deer Ridge, am I correct, over Taylor Place?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct.
So, I mean, if we went up Prairie Valley, we're going to pick up 10, 12 potential new lots, which is not going to pay the difference by any means. So to say, you know, and I'm not disagreeing, I want to see the numbers too. But to say we're going to wait 6 or 8 weeks is putting a cart before the horse here. I think we need to make a commitment. You know, like we can invest this money. Like your best guess, what's the Eco Village property worth on a retail market today? 4 million, 5 million?
That's not really a fair question.
No, okay, sorry, I'll answer it myself. Then I'm guessing $4 million. Then you got the developer on the other side of Deer Ridge that wants to buy in. You know, our whole thing is about housing. We've got all sorts of, we got the Eco Village property for housing. You got other properties there that are hand-strung right now and can't develop because of without sewer. Those are more houses on the market. This is an opportunity. And there's no way that if you went with a Taylor Place sewer design today, that you're not going to put money back in the bank account. We could double our money and then take that money, our winnings, so to speak, and reinvest in other things. But it's going to take some time.
I don't think there's anybody disputing your principle. I think it's just the best way of getting there. And if we're spending $3 million, which we're planning to borrow right now anyway, to tear up a road, then maybe it's, you know, I think that's what we need to see. That's, you know, so we can make that comparison. That's just my take. Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Worship. I happen to agree with those comments, but the fact is that none of this will probably likely get spent in a year's time. We would be looking at the plans to get there. We may get the numbers in 6 or 8 weeks on that particular project, but we're not likely to be spending them until next year's budget. So I just think the opportunity to invest and have $270,000 or $263,000 with money that we would hold just makes sense to me.
I guess that's a question, I don't know for who, but if all these priority projects, the only things that we could spend now are things that we've already committed to in the budget, no? One way or another? Not necessarily. Oh, I'm not thinking in terms of budget amendment, but in terms of what we could actually, what works we could actually accomplish this year, because we're already in April.
Yeah, from a functional delivery kind of perspective, Mr. Mayor, I'd say you're right. And it's things that are in queue. And I would note that's the way that province kind of has portrayed the money as well as, you know, capital projects in flight. That's kind of their, want to see the hit the ground running projects as well.
Okay, Councillor Trainer.
I would like to see a portion of this money, a small portion, whatever that is, put aside or allocated to the replacement of a pier. You know, the majority of this money will probably be spent on something like sewer or some kind of road project. And we rarely get big chunks of money like this from the province. So I think it's an opportunity to take a little bit of it and do something that really benefits our whole community. And that's kind of a fun project, I guess, is something that, you know, everybody can kind of get behind. And I think over the last couple of months, we've really seen the community step up and say that they want a replacement for the pier, as well as Rotary that came today. So I think this is our one opportunity that, you know, we've been given this money. And I think that, again, spending most of it on capital projects, like, you know, things that have to be done is really important. But the pier is just a really great project that I think a lot of people could get behind. And it kind of reminds me a bit of the skate park, where we just decided to fund that. And I think that was such a good move. So, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Patton, Barkwell, then Peak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of the pier. I'm in favor of the sewer. I think one thing that we need to look at, and I think that's what Dave was talking about, is that there is just no way, being that we're into April, that we're going to see shovels in the ground doing the Deer Ridge sewer. It just won't happen this year. We know already that the pier's not going to happen. So I think as a group, we can decide, or we can have these conversations. We invest, we get the additional $200,000, but as we go through the process, that will give us the opportunity to say, okay, well, it's going to be 2.7 million for this. We'll have a better idea in regards, hopefully, in regards to the pier or these other capital projects that we want to do. But I think the last thing that we want to do is, for no better lack of a term, is do a knee-jerk decision where all of a sudden something comes up and it's like, oh darn, we should have been looking at that. But I think that I agree. I think Deer Ridge Sewer is one that we really need to move forward on. And but I still would like to, because it's not shovel ready, that we do invest and recoup some dollars. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
I think the investing question is kind of moot for us because we're not ready to do anything with it anyway for a while. I agree with most of what Councillor Trainer says. You know, the community's behind the pier. Everybody wants to see a new pier one way or the other. But I think it's a bit early for us to commit funds for this. Now that we have the Rotary group organizing community support and stuff, I'd like to take another stab at a grant. There are waterfront development grants that this would be eligible for with the community contribution. Our grant application would be even stronger. And so then we could, if we can get a specific waterfront development grant for the pier, it would be a better outcome than using this money. But you know, we don't have to commit all this money too. We can kind of hold some in reserve in case we don't get a grant. But I don't want to necessarily see us commit to the pier before we've been turned down for a grant and then as far as Deer Ridge, I guess we're all, in favor of that. It's just a question of waiting to see which is the most efficient way of getting there, Route A or Route B. And then we'll have to wait, 6-8 weeks. No, not a long time to wait to get that information and then proceed from there.
CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councilor Barkwell. I think that's a good approach. The one caution there is when I was listening to Rotary, they did say they don't want to commit to any specific funding amounts, but they see themselves maybe more as a facilitator of groups and bodies and people to help generate funding. A lot of times when it comes to specific grants, they want to know what that specific funding amount is from your partner agency. Doesn't mean we won't get funded on a grant. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but it seems like unless we change their mind through further discussion, they don't want to give us a number right
now. Councillor Van Alphen. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Peaks next.
Sorry, Marty. I really agree with the Eco Village and doing that. And I really think it's important to support the pier. It's I hate the term, but we do need to look for grants, and I'm sure Laurie is continuing to do that anyway. I'd like to see us maybe support the pier in a philosophical way, which is say that you would put we as a community would put $100,000 matching funds so that you could say to the Rotary, we'll match any funds up to $100,000. Sometimes you get a real boost with a local organization, and the community understands that the council understands how important the pier is to an awful lot of the community. So that's an option, but still I would say invest the funds because none of that would have to be committed till down the road.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you. I don't disagree with anyone around the table. I truly believe the Eco Project is, in my mind, probably one of the most important things for future development and housing in our community. The only other thing is also, if it is 6 to 8 weeks or 9 or 10 weeks before we get the other option, just being a devil's advocate, I guess, every community in BC's got money. Everybody was given money. One of these days, they're all going to go out to tender. So if we're going to sit, it may be tough to get contractors in the future, or the cost of projects are going to start to escalate because contractors will have that ability, because everybody's going to be looking for excavators and construction companies to do their infrastructure work. So the quicker you're out of the gate, probably the cheaper it'll be, possibly. Just a thought.
What is the Prairie Valley Road project? Is that scheduled for this year or next year? Design this year, construction next year.
design this year, construction next
Right.
year.
Councillor Peak, then Mark.
I sure understand what Councillor Van Alphen says about, but again, out the gate is, we wouldn't be putting it to tender even if we put the money and said, okay, we're going to put X amount towards the Eco Village. That money wouldn't be going out the door for tender until, I don't know, when would it, Dave? Dave and Dave.
So I'm no engineer or construction worker. But as the finance guy, once the bills start coming in, that's when the money will start going out. So whenever that is, my understanding is design work still has to be finalized on that project, and that could take who knows how long. So, late 2023, early 2024 type thing would be my guess, but I'd hope Joe could answer that better than me.
Could I subsequent to that, Your Worship? So if we invested the money, we wouldn't need it before that next time anyway. I mean, if the philosophical bent of the council is say, this is a very important project, and it's probably one we'll move forward on in the budgeting this September, because you want to get us started early, that we would be able to make that discussion. That would only get, this money would be invested until April next year. It is still make it available, and we'd have $263,000 more.
Through the mayor, yes.
Go ahead, CS.
Yeah, thank you. Permission from both. Yeah, I was just going to say, and to be clear, staff's not trying to slow council down. We're not trying. We just got the letter from the province on the clarity of the money. The first scheduled meeting of council, as soon as we got the letter, we put it on the agenda, so we're here today. And in many respects, we could have provided better advice had we waited, but we thought it's good to start getting the discussion going, even if the desire is to maybe with intent identify a few projects, give some initiating direction. Maybe you want us to come back in with better numbers on Deer Ridge, et cetera. This is still very helpful to us, but we'll also hit the ground running with any direction you guys have for us. So we just wanted to get the creative juices flowing today.
So I guess the thing is, we can use this money on projects that we're already committed for this year, but then you're pushing, you're still pushing back then that money that we've already budgeted for, for next year's projects. So it doesn't really matter in that sense. But is there anything that we haven't got in our financial plan, that we have in our financial plan for next year that we could do this year? Because that's, the only real benefit of otherwise, we just carry on with our financial plan, right? And money, I think there's kind of I kind of see there's kind of a general consensus that sewer to Deer Ridge and Pier, which were two things that were previously, we'd only had budgeted for grants. These are now things we can do. And but we still can't do them until next year, right? So, is that an accurate way of thinking? I don't know. Councillor Betts, then Trainer, then Alphen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, are you up?
Oh yeah, I missed him. Barkwell first.
I'll try to be quick this time. Further to Councillor Peak's comments, yeah, I guess I have to adapt my thoughts on the pier a little bit, in that perhaps we do need to commit a little something to make our application for a grant stronger. There'll be the community part, there'll be our part, and then maybe the funding part. So I don't know what that number is. I hope staff can come back to us with some recommendations, but some portion of that grant application always has to come from the community, from the district. So whatever that would be, I guess staff can give us some advice on. And secondly, I'm told by people who've been in the industry for a long time that the tenders for projects that are sent out in January, February are usually considerably better priced as companies try to fill up their book for the year. And Joe can either confirm or deny that. But anyhow, if that's the timing that we come up for our work to go to tender next January, February, then that's going to be great. That'll work out well. That'll be more of a savings than the 2% interest we earn or whatever it is, or 0.5%. But that's, it's going to be there anyway. There's nothing to spend it on till then.
CF?
Just wanted to add on to that comment from Councillor Barkwell, Mr. Mayor. So if council wants to earmark something with respect to the pier, one way to do it is, we were talked about good, better, best, or small, medium, large. Our best guess at this point for sort of a basic reconstruction, because council's already put aside the 200,000 for removal, in terms of building the basic reconstruction, something in the neighborhood of about $300,000 on top of that. So, I mean, that would be a basic, and then maybe what we do with Rotary is work with them to say, if you want more or better, then we'd be looking for you guys to generate the funds to get us there. But I just wanted you to be aware of sort of that basic ballpark guesstimate of a basic reconstruction.
Great, thank you. Councillor Traynor.
So yeah, I like that idea. I would, I just, again, thinking back to the skate park, originally we had planned to fundraise for that. And then it was clear that that was going to take a really, really long time. So then we just decided to just do the project, which I think was a really good decision. I kind of see that with the pier too. If we take too long and try to fundraise, it could be a couple of years before it gets done. And we have the opportunity right now to get it done sooner than later. And so I think that, yeah, I definitely support putting some money aside. Obviously, we could probably invest that money until next year, because it probably wouldn't be built until next year or the following year. So in the meantime, the money can earn interest, and but we can, make it known that we're committed to that.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Well, I agree with Councillor Traynor. I think the pier is an important project, and showing a commitment, and I think it'll encourage the rest of the community to fall in line, or not, to back Rotary, let's say, and invest some money into this project. And I think we could get a really interesting product in the end that everybody will be happy with. So I'm excited about that. Just a question through to our CEO and possible our planner, 6 to 9 or 8, 10, whatever weeks. Is there any way that we could get a ballpark idea what the Eco Village property is worth from a real estate person? I mean, you have some preliminary drawings, ideas, concepts. I don't know what the density would be, but it'd be interesting to have some kind of number. Like, I don't think we'd want it to be a public number, but it would help us in our decision making too.
CO Stat?
Yeah, I'll just say a few words, then we'll give it to Brad, who actually knows what to say. But I did want to point out that being prepared to know what our lands are worth for the perspective of, possibly disbursement, that is one of the key priorities of council with this acquisition and disposition of land study. And now that's been funded through the grant. So we're really excited about that, because we'll have a better toolkit in the future to answer these kinds of questions, not only there, but also elsewhere. But in terms of the specific timing related to Eco Village and any estimate with that, Brad, I don't know if you could guide us there.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Van Alphen, I think we could try to get a number within that next time we have a report presented on this topic as a rough idea. We would have to get a third party firm to help us with just getting an idea of what that might be. There's a couple of wild card factors, though, that council should be aware of what would increase the value of the land. One would be the zoning approval. Right now, it's still currently zoned institutional, so we still need to go through an OCP amendment and zoning approval for the Eco Village property, which is on my to-do list for this year. And then the second would be the sewer, because as soon as you extend the sewer lines to our property in that area, it's going to dramatically probably increase the value of that land. To what extent, I couldn't tell you, but that would be a big wild card factor.
So I kind of like the CEO's idea that, you know, if we commit to the pier, you know, the funding for like, and then if we want bells and whistles, that's where Rotary can come in and help with the fundraising for anything extra. But when do we expect to hear, get that report about the pier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So talking with Joe again just earlier today, we still anticipate we'll hit council's original timeline in your work plan for Q2 rather, in June. So sort of that, we'll probably have something together mid-June and hopefully hit the meeting in the end of June. I can't remember the exact date of that meeting, 27th, I think, to be able to give council those three options.
Okay, so that'll be around the same time that we hear about the Prairie Valley and Deer Ridge sewer project combination. So that's kind of the timing for those two things together could work out. I mean, if I guess what you're looking for us today is just an idea of where we would like to see this money being spent, and so would an agreement in principle that we think that the provincial funding should be spent on getting sewer to Deer Ridge and replacement of the pier, you know, would that be kind of the direction you'd be looking for?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the report for today was just for council's information, but the more direction you can give us, the better. So if council can get to a sort of a principled agreement and notional direction, it's helpful for us. We're to focus our time and effort on this. So yes, that'd be great.
Right, and then the details will come out in the budget and everything like that. So I'm just wondering from council if that's kind of if I've captured the essence of what we've been talking about there with that, and if there's anything I'm missing. Councillor Peak.
Two things, and I forgot all about what we're talking. We said housing is very important. I don't know whether eventually we would I'm just going to say it. I don't know what we would do with it. But if we took $1 million of the 4.5 million and said that will go towards housing, and that could be in whatever way or fashion that would be. We have looked at some opportunities of infrastructure and DC contributions towards a project, and there may be more. I just put that out as an option. And then my other question around the pier. So we've got $200,000 to demolish it. A basic pier might cost $300,000. Dave, can we get that $300,000 but still being able to invest the 4.5 for a year? And if we had to spend 300,000 for the pier on top of the 200,000 demolishing, we wouldn't be spending that necessarily with all the fish habitat and stuff until 2024? You don't know, you're not an engineer. But I'm just thinking that we can still fiddle around and make the 4.5 available to invest. That's my thought. But my contribution to council is there would be any consideration about using any portion of the 4.5 towards housing.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, to me, my impression of running the sewer, and I've been quiet along here because I've been agreeing really with everything said so far, just to let you know. But getting the sewer out towards Deer Ridge to service the Eco Village, to service future developments, to me is the foundation for our next housing developments. Truly. So for me, that I do see it as really important, especially to snowball towards the sale of some lands, which might be able to further pay for our aquatic center. I really think it's just so important to move forward in a way that it will generate revenue for us. And it's not just spending money. The pier will be a spend, but it'll be beautiful. Whereas the other one will generate housing opportunities, generate some more additional income and funds. Like it's going to be a positive snowball in our, whether we spend it on roads or on an aquatic center, it'll just snowball in a positive way for our budget.
And it'll be beautiful as well.
That sewer's going to be great.
Councillor Van Elfen.
I appreciate Councillor Peake's comments. I truly do. And I think Councillor Betts nailed it for me. Like out there is opportunities galore for housing and all sorts of housing, even in Eco Village. Like we could look at densification situations that may work to our benefit and to the consumer's benefit. I think we've showed some serious commitment with Parkdale Place Housing Society on what we're prepared to do infrastructure-wise. And if another project came along, maybe we would look at the same again. I don't know. But so I think we've shown a lot of commitment in housing, affordable housing for seniors and at the Parkdale Place situation. But yeah, I like to see us invest the money at this point in time and then, you know, let staff work on the Eco Village concept and the pier and come back with some reports and see how quickly we can get shovels in the ground. Thank you.
Councillor Trainer.
I just wanted to remind council too that we have a water project coming up, the water treatment plant conversion to sodium hypochlorite. I don't know if I said that right. That's 1.2 million borrowing. And Dave, was that for next year? Sorry to put you on the spot. Anyway, that would be, I think, another project that following the pier and the sewer, if there's any left, because we'd have to borrow for that. And that's a really important project. So I think that that's something that we should also consider in the rankings.
Was that a question or no? Okay. All right.
It was just a statement.
All right. Councillor Peake.
See, I want to get people talking more, and that's really good because we don't get an opportunity to talk as much as we should. So the fact that, yes, we believe that Deer Ridge creates a housing opportunity, creates funds that could go into other housing investments, we just don't get an opportunity to talk. So I'm glad you're all talking today. Thank you.
And that wasn't a question either. Councillor Barkwell. Sorry, it's all good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question either, but I can talk a lot if you like. No, I think Councillor Trainer brings up a really good point there that after giving us some thought that one of the other next priorities should be the water treatment plant spending, because we've had to increase our water rates a lot over the last few years, and what we can do to prevent further rate increases in the water utility would be a good thing. So that has to be, I think, a pretty good next priority for some of the remaining funds.
Councillor Van Elfen.
I haven't seen the numbers, but that's I like where you're going with that. It'd be nice to see a year without water increases, but good luck with that. The only other, no, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Trainer.
Just with regards to the motion that Kendra's drafting, there's 300,000 there allocated for the pier. Do we want to put in numbers quite yet, or do you just want a general guide for projects that I just would be hesitant to put in an exact number in case it perhaps needs a little bit more or a little bit less. And I just would rather leave that a little bit flexible, but know that that is our intention to fund it.
Yeah, I didn't even know we were going to have a motion at all. I thought we were just receiving for information. But CAO stat.
Yeah, it's the report's up for information, but because it sounded like you guys were moving towards making a decision, I had Kendra draft something. We can delete that very easily. The only reason why I put 300,000 is there is, again, if we are going to start hunting for more grants and filling out applications, we'll have to put what our, we could take it out again and come back later and talk again about it. It doesn't need to be identified today.
So why don't we just say something like the basic replacement of the pier be funded or something like that? And then that implies that if you want something more than basic, we're gonna have to fundraise for it. Councillor Peak, did you have something?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Do we want, and I'm addressing to finance, Dave, do we want a motion that talks about investing for a year? Or do you want to wait till something goes back?
Through the mayor, based on the timelines of these projects, I was going to invest it anyway.
You're the finance person, makes sense to me.
Now, unless you told us today that there's XYZ project that we want done tomorrow, then of course I would not have done that. But in terms of timelines and those types of things and how things move, that was the initial thought process.
Okay, Councillor Van Alphen.
Just back to what Councillor Trainer was talking about, the changing of chemicals in our water treatment facility and being more cost effective. Does anyone have a timeline? I don't recall, I know Joe spoke about it this morning, of doing that tie-in on Giant's Head, the untreated water. Like, is that another possible priority project? I don't know what the timeline was on that one, but that would take pressure off our water treatment facility by giving raw water to the farms.
Anybody want to?
I think we're talking about this year doing the sort of analysis and design, but we'd be probably, even if we get that worked up, minimum 18 to 24 months before we're going to see shovels in the ground on that project. I will say though, just for good work of staff on the costs of water treatment with respect to hypochlorite, we're already working up what might evolve into a collaboration with the regional communities like Penticton and others who use this chemical to see if we can do bulk purchasing to lower our costs. And right now it's looking quite positive actually. So we'll be hopefully coming back to council with more on that.
Okay, so why don't we roll with this right now? Does anybody want to bring that motion forward? Councillor Van Alphen, second by Councillor Betts. Any further discussion? Yeah, Councillor Trainer.
Sorry to be nitpicky, but is it okay with the pier if we do, instead of basic replacement, a like for like? And then if the Rotary comes to us with more money or we get a grant, we can build on that? Is that okay? Sorry?
They would understand.
I just like for like, because then people know exactly what we mean, whereas basic might be like a platform, you know? So.
That's like for like, not lake for lake. Yeah. Councillor Barkwell?
I'm not entirely comfortable with like for like. I do, but because that pier is kind of wide. The design might not be the same. We might go for something a little longer, a little narrower. Perhaps we could just say to replace the pier. Yeah, and I don't want to. Sorry. Yeah. High dive, swings, pulleys.
Well, right now the motion on the floor is basic. So unless somebody wants to bring an amendment forward.
I'm good.
I mean, and keeping in mind, we'll have the report come back, and I don't know if the report will use the word basic or not, but we'll get the idea of what's basic, I guess, from the report. So I think, I don't know, probably good enough for now. Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Good. Good discussion. 2023 Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. Okay, we're all going to argue over this one, I know. Who takes this? Is a staff member going to speak to this or no? Or is my problem? It's basically we're looking for, well, Monday, April 24th. So just before our council meeting, right? Yeah. So we just need 3 people to review the role, if there is one. Any volunteers? I'll do it. Councillor Patton? Councillor Val, you're volunteering?
Yep.
Councillor Trainer, you're volunteering? Okay. So if someone wants to bring a motion forward, those 3 names. Councillor Betts, should have given her the opportunity. Takes 5 minutes. Okay, good. Councillor Van Elfen, the second. Okay, any? Oh, okay, okay. So we have Betts and Van Elfen. And I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries. And that'll probably only take. We'll all show up at the same time anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay, good. What's next? No bylaws for adoption. There's item removed from the consent agenda. Councillor Betts, that's the letter. The International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. That was the one, right?
Yep. So just speaking to this briefly, I wanted to bring this back to our attention because I think it's an important opportunity to acknowledge defend the rights of the LGBTQ plus people. Now, I did get information from Kendra that our current policy position is that we don't make proclamations. However, that is from 2014, and perhaps we can review that. I think it's important. This organization offers that that you can get a pride flag for the price of $15. And on May 17th, we can fly the flag and support, because it's the 20th anniversary of the day, to support defending the rights and, of course, just showing our support to that community. And I just think that it's important, it's modern, it's just showing solidarity with many people in our community. And I wanted to bring that to our attention.
Okay. Yeah, no, you could, Councillor Van Elfen and then Councillor Barkle.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that forward. I think it is a very worthwhile cause, but do we not have a policy at the District of Summerland that we don't do proclamations?
That's what she just said.
Huh?
That's what she just said.
Oh, sorry, with flags and what have you?
Councillor Barkle.
I think we can stick to that policy, and still, if Councillor Betts wants to put forward a motion that we purchase a flag and fly it that day, we not necessarily making a proclamation, but we're making a statement. And I would second that motion if she wants to make something to that effect.
Okay, so yeah, we can buy a flag without proclaiming, I guess. Nothing stopping us. Councillor Patton and Peak.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree. For Councillor Betts, we get a number of requests for proclamations, and this did come up in the last term also, and we did agree that we would follow through again, as in the previous council before that, was not to do proclamations. But I do agree that as a one-off, without a proclamation, but we do show our support, as we already do with the rainbow crosswalks, that just show that we are an inclusive community. Thank you.
Councillor Peak.
I agree with the 2014 decision at not doing proclamations. You can trip all over your feet with the hundreds that come through. But I do agree with buying a flag, because I think honoring the LGBTQ is a terrific thing to do.
Okay. So do we need a motion to buy a flag? Or we can just take it out of the CEO's expense accounts?
But is it the desire of council to give clarity that we are flying that flag on May 17th in particular, because that's the request in this letter. Okay, so for the
Do you want me
data,
to make that motion?
I think we can just take it as direction, but if we want motion,
I think direction is good. Yeah.
yeah. I think the more we do it as a motion, the more it starts to feel like a proclamation for a particular day, so.
Yeah. When we fly a third flag like that, what are the district's flag comes down? How does that work? Because we only have 3 poles out there.
I think we take ours down first, and we do it one other time for I'm trying to remember, the honoring the fallen of public service labor union or something. I can't remember the name of that, but yeah, we do that now.
Yeah, good, awesome. Good, thank you, Councillor Betts. Any public comment period? Nobody's online? Okay, if there's anybody who would like to speak, just unmute yourself and it's gone, okay. So we're not closing, there's no closed meeting, right? And so I'll motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Betts, all in favor? Okay, thank you very much.